An emotional encounter for Pope Francis. The Holy Father asked for forgiveness from refugees in Bangladesh. We'll have a report from the ground. Russia probe. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn faces serious charges as part of the wide-ranging investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Christian persecution. A meeting at the United Nations focuses on helping those persecuted for their faith. And a powerful message putting Christ back in Christmas.
It's my tremendous honor to finally wish America and the world a very Merry Christmas.
From the President of the United States. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, December 1st, 2017.
Facciamo vedere al mondo cosa fa l'egoismo.
Pope Francis asked for forgiveness during an emotional encounter with Rohingya Muslim refugees in Bangladesh. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. The Holy Father is on the second and final leg of a historic trip to South Asia. He started out in Myanmar before arriving in Bangladesh. Today, Francis ordained 16 priests during an outdoor mass in the capital city. An estimated 100,000 people gathered in DACA Park for the service. The Holy Father also traded his Pope-mobile for a rickshaw. He waved to crowds from one of the back seats of one of Bangladesh's typical bicycle-pulled carts. Edward Penton with EWTN's National Catholic Register is traveling with the Pope. He joins us now from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Edward, the Holy Father's voice was trembling with emotion when he spoke. Tell us about the mood and the Rohingyas' reaction.
Well, the meeting actually started off very jubilantly. It was a meeting of interfaith leaders, but then it got on to the Rohingyas, and of course things got very emotional. The Pope met 16 of them. Beforehand they spoke to us and they were saying, we want him to call us by our name. We're very grateful that he could meet us, but we want this issue drawn to the world's attention. And then it all got very emotional, and a couple of them were crying. Cardinal de Rosario of Dhaka gave a long embrace of one of them, but it was really what was to be expected, really, after waiting for so long to meet the Holy Father.
Such incredible, the kind of emotions. The United Nations says the Rohingya have fled a campaign of ethnic cleansing by Myanmar's military. So do you think the Pope's words and visit will have an impact on their situation?
Well, he said in his speech today that there's very little that he can do, that the Church can do, but they have a place in our hearts. And I think in that sense of praying for them, that's what the Church can do. But I think in terms of impact, global impact diplomatically, I think it might have, because the Pope went, of course, to Burma beforehand and came here. And in Burma, that's where it all began, the attacks on the Rohingya. He was well received there and very well received here. So we'll just have to see, I think, whether there is a positive impact on their behalf.
Sure. We don't often hear the Pope speak in English, but he did today at Mass. Do you know why?
Yes, he sometimes does that, Wyatt, especially, of course, when it's an English-speaking country, which this is. It's not the main language, of course. It's Bengali, but they do speak English here. And I think he wanted to really get into contact with them by speaking a language that they know. Most of it was in Italian, though, but he did switch to English. And, of course, it was very important for the 16 new priests who he ordained today.
Sure. Well, the Pope will spend one more day in Bangladesh, a country with a minuscule, very small Catholic population. What's on his agenda?
Right, tomorrow he's going to meet a house of Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is going to be devoted really the whole day to the Catholic Church. He'll then have a meeting with priests, religious and seminarians. He'll then visit the parish cemetery and visit an ancient church, the Holy Rosary Church in the city. And then he'll have a meeting with youth at a Catholic college here, which is really sort of indicative of the great impact and work that the Catholic Church does here, even though they're only number 700,000 out of 160 million. But they do a lot in terms of education and healthcare and other things.
Sure. Well, I know a lot of people around the world have been praying for the Pope's trip to South Asia, and it's nice to hear that he is having an impact. Edward Penton with the National Catholic Register, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks, Wyatt.
We're following a developing story tonight at the White House. President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Flynn is one of the central figures in the ongoing Russia investigation. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports.
Wyatt, President Trump did not immediately respond to the news that one of his earliest supporters is in trouble with the law. He picked Michael Flynn as his national security advisor, despite reports that President Obama warned him not to. Now Flynn admits he lied to the FBI about his connection to Russia.
General Flynn! You feel you betrayed your country!
Flynn enters federal court today to plead guilty to making false statements. He becomes the fourth Trump advisor charged in a wide-ranging investigation led by special counsel Robert Mueller.
It seemed obvious to me that he had made a lot of misstatements to a whole lot of people. And the frightening thing is this guy was the national security advisor of the United States.
Mueller continued the probe started by former FBI Director James Comey, who claims Trump fired him after he refused to end the investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
Mr. President, any comment on Michael Flynn being indicted, sir?
The president's personal attorney, Ty Cobb, did release a statement today saying nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anyone other than Mr. Flynn. Court documents show Flynn lied about his conversations with Russia's ambassador, which took place in the period between Trump's election and inauguration. White House officials say Flynn also misled them, which is why he was forced to resign in February. In a statement, Flynn says, "I recognize that the actions I acknowledged in court today were wrong, and through my faith in God, I am working to set things right."
Flynn was also accused of lobbying for Turkey. Today's lesser charges suggest he's cooperating with Mueller's investigation in exchange for leniency. Wyatt?
Correspondent Mark Irons reporting from the White House. Thanks, Mark. An illegal immigrant is found not guilty in the 2015 murder of Kate Steinle. President Trump says the ruling is, quote, a complete travesty of justice. A jury says Jose Inez Garcia Zarate did not intentionally fire the fatal shot, though they did find him guilty of a lesser gun charge. He now faces 3 years in jail. One legal expert says the verdict is, quote, vindication for immigrants, but Steinle's family say they are shocked and saddened. Republicans are on the verge of passing historic tax reform. GOP leaders in the Senate are confident they can push the party's $1.4 trillion tax bill through the chamber. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has more on the bill and a last-minute pro-life push in it. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Republicans have the votes to pass the GOP tax bill. They need 50 votes, and then Vice President Mike Pence would break a tie. But tonight, senators are still wheeling and dealing.
The motion is not agreed to.
A vote-a-rama in the Senate allows every single senator to propose changes to the bill. Republican Steve Daines of Montana tells me he wants to create an unborn child tax credit. It would give $2,000 to mothers after they give birth.
That is a life. So what this means long-term is that as we talk about perhaps overturning Roe v. Wade someday, it gives us that much more strength in terms of a law that says what that woman is carrying is a life. And that could have some significant implications long-term.
The overall legislation would bring the first overhaul of the U.S. tax code in 31 years. It would slash the corporate tax rate, offer more modest cuts for families and individuals, and eliminate several popular deductions. Democrats are united in their opposition to the bill. They say they'll fight to reverse it.
To too many Americans, the American dream is slipping away. Hard-working Americans who get up every morning worried about paying the bills, making the mortgage payment, the tuition payment, the health care bill. They're not getting the help they need in this bill, and instead it's going to the wealthiest.
Today, GOP leaders were still working on a pair of holdouts, Senators Bob Corker of Tennessee and Arizona's Jeff Flake. Susan Collins of Maine is a Republican wild card. Earlier today, one of her aides said she's still undecided.
And Senator Collins says she's happy she won an agreement to add to the bill a $10,000 state and local property tax deduction. Senator Flake now says he's on board, but the last we heard from Senator Corker, he's still on the fence. Wyatt?
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from the Capitol. Thanks, Jason. The bill seemed to be sailing towards passage yesterday until a report was released by Congress's nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation. That panel estimates the package would produce budget deficits totaling $1 trillion over the coming decade. Joining us now is Steve Bell, Senior Advisor at the Bipartisan Policy Center, a think tank based in Washington, D.C. He's also a former staff director of the Senate Budget Committee. So, Steve, will the Senate's tax reform bill actually add $1 trillion to the deficit?
At least.
Okay.
I think even the very best economic forecast would get you about $1 trillion that's over 10 years. The problem with that is even if you assume pretty good growth rate because of the passage of such a bill, you're still going to have increasing deficits.
It's incredible. You know, Republicans, including some who are hard to convince, like Senator John McCain, say this bill will actually stimulate the economy. Is that true in and of itself, that it'll stimulate the economy?
Sure, a little bit. I mean, you have to be honest about it. And the question not is will it stimulate, but by how much? So let's take the most pessimistic forecast, and that is, it'll be just 1/10 to 0.3%. The most optimistic is it may be 0.8%. That doesn't sound like much, but you know, if you're at 2.2% growth right now in the economy, and you go up 0.8, that's at 3%. Now you're starting to make a difference in income and in job creation. Most of this job creation is going to be among small and mid-sized businesses, though. They're the ones who pay 35% tax rate. The big boys, like Apple, pays maybe 5% tax rate, effective tax rate. So for small business and medium-sized business that do their business here in America, it's going to be a real step forward.
The Congressional Budget Office, a nonpartisan federal agency that provides the budget and economic information to Congress, says the low-income Americans, the lowest, would be the hardest hit by the bill. So then American bishops, of course, are concerned about that, as are a lot of people. So do you think that's an accurate assessment, that the poorest would be the most hurt?
Oh, I think so. That's what's wrong with the bill. I gave you what was good as far as small and medium-sized business.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is there are going to be either tax cuts, increases, or no improvement for people in the bottom, let's say 30%, 40% of income levels. And that's going to be a real problem.
Okay, well, we'll be watching to see how this develops both in the Senate and, of course, how it's reconciled in the House as well. Steve Bell, Senior Advisor at the Bipartisan Policy Center, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
A Catholic leader from Iraq delivers an important message to the United Nations. The plight of persecuted Christians isn't just a Middle East problem, it's an international one.
We need more of this help so we would be able really to continue life again, not just to continue, but also to start life again, to play a big and important part also in the life of the Iraqi society, especially after defeating ISIS.
Archbishop Bashar Warda of Erbil, Iraq, spoke with EWTN News Nightly yesterday before a meeting at the UN. Warda and the Pope's ambassador to the UN, Archbishop Auza, are trying to help Christians and other religious minorities return to their homes. They've been driven out by ISIS and sectarian violence in the region. Violence breaks out in Honduras as the country awaits the official results from a presidential election. Supporters of challenger Salvador Nasrallah became angry after their candidate's 5-point lead disappeared. An alleged computer glitch halted vote counting for several hours. President Juan Orlando Hernandez now leads by 1 point, with 91% of the precincts reporting. A former Salvadorian army officer is facing charges over the 1989 massacre of 6 Jesuits and 2 others in El Salvador. Inocente Orlando Matano Morales was extradited this week from the U.S. to Spain. Court documents say the Jesuits, 5 of whom were Spaniards, were helping organize peace talks during El Salvador's civil war. They were murdered along with their housekeeper and her daughter. Coming up, Motorcycles for Peace, a report from Rome on the group's mission and their adventures. Plus, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, steps away from the podium and opens up. We'll tell you about her Catholic connection. On this day in history, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in 1955 to a white man on a Montgomery area transit bus, igniting a year-long boycott of buses by African Americans. The bus is now on display at the Henry Ford Museum outside Detroit. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. A group in Washington wants to find a permanent bipartisan answer to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA. Among those helping the process are the U.S. bishops.
For the bishops, this is a very important priority because they see every day individuals who are losing their DACA status, who are facing anxiety. And so they are steadfastly working with Congress to try and find a solution.
The group, BPC Action, aims to have a solution by the end of the year. They are receiving input from leaders in faith, finance, and education. A group of police officers in Rome are on a unique ride. It's a trip that will take them from Italy to Africa to help Catholic missionaries. Our Vatican correspondent Juliette Lindley caught up with those big-hearted cops at Rome's Police Academy.
It has all the trappings of a biker club, fun-loving guys, breathtaking scenery, and adventures on the road. But this group has a different purpose. It pays homage to missionaries. Bernardo Lepore is the founder of Moto for Peace. He tells me the idea comes from his love of motorbikes and the feeling of freedom they give him. Yet he and his colleagues decided they needed a higher goal, and that goal would be giving back. Set up in 2001, the group brings donations and aid every year to missionary groups. Now they're heading for 2 schools and a hospital in southern Africa. They found the projects with help from the Vatican.
And we have seen the importance of that the lay people getting involved, not only for their own enjoyment, but taking their love and concern to different cultures and people.
The policemen do this work on their own time and with their own money. Officers from a dozen countries are taking part, including Celestino Suarez from Barcelona, Spain. He's a member since 2003.
I can say that it's important because the Catholic missions around the world is incredible the job they made.
The police officers say serving those missionaries is worth the effort, even though this year it'll mean traveling for 56 days, over nearly 7,000 miles, and sleeping often outdoors.
When they zoom off on their 12 motorbikes, the international police officers are going to be heading to these 7 African countries. They're going to start off in South Africa, then Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Lesotho. 7 countries under one unique slogan: on a mission to help missionaries. At the Police Academy in Rome, Juliette Lindley for EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks, Juliette. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders fielded questions Wednesday night, but they weren't from the media. Instead, she joined a conversation at the American Principles Project's Red, White, and Blue Gala. Among the topics, her famous chocolate and pecan pie.
I usually make it with bourbon. Don't tell my dad. I'm Southern Baptist, but I married a Catholic, so I feel like it balances out perfectly fine.
Sanders also says she got into politics when she was a child and spent a summer handing out pamphlets with her father, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Up next, the story of Jesus' birth.
For unto you is born this day a Savior, Christ the Lord.
Seen through a different eye.
Told you it was important.
Lauren Ashburn talks to the director of The Star. And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas outside the White House. We'll have a special message from President Trump. Today, the church remembers English Jesuit and martyr St. Edmund Campion. A convert to Catholicism, Edmund became a priest and experienced a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary foretelling his martyrdom. He was canonized by Pope Paul VI in 1970. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. The oldest complete Latin Bible in existence is returning to England for the first time in 1,300 years. Monks in northwest England produced the book in 716. It weighs 77 pounds and is a foot thick. It was sent to Italy as a gift for Pope Gregory II and has remained in that country since. It's currently in Florence. The British Library secured the book for an exhibit on Anglo-Saxon history that starts in 2018. The historic Bible describes the birth of Christ in beautiful hand-printed Latin. A new animated movie discusses it from a different perspective. Sony's Entertainment's The Star tells the nativity story from a lighthearted viewpoint of the animals.
Hang on! Cyrus! Deborah! Come on, guys! Wait up!
I expected a left turn 2 deserts ago.
This week, Lauren Ashburn spoke to the film's director.
Joining us now is Tim Reckert, director of the faith-inspired animated feature film The Star, now in theaters. He's an Academy Award nominee and a Catholic. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
This computer-animated feature film is incredible. What made you want to take on this project?
Well, you know, growing up, we had a box of tapes that we pulled out of the closet every year for Christmas. And, you know, we have movies about Santa Claus and A Christmas Carol, but we never had a movie that the kids wanted to watch that was about the Nativity story. I mean, like an animated movie about the Nativity. And so when Sony approached me with this idea, I was really excited to basically make the movie that I wish I had had as a kid. And it's so unusual that you get to make a movie that no one's done before. So I was really excited to fill that niche.
And from the perspective of the animals, too, I want to show a clip from the movie right now.
I'm Joseph. I'm in a bad mood. Wait.
Is that supposed to be me?
It's totally you. Now, we just saw her hitting Joseph on the shoulder. What do you say to critics who are saying that Mary and Joseph just appear too real in this film?
That was my whole goal with this, was to present Mary and Joseph in their humanity, because they are saints, they're holy people, they're close to God, but they were also human beings. They were people with a sense of humor, and they were spouses, you know, and I think anyone who's observed a married couple, especially a young married couple, has seen that kind of teasing, intimate, close relationship that just, you know, makes them feel familiar. And I wanted Mary and Joseph to have that. You know, it's something I've noticed. I've seen so many paintings of Mary throughout the centuries, but none of them show Mary, our mother, laughing. And she would have had a great sense of humor. She would have loved life. And I wanted to present that side of Mary and Joseph.
What a great observation. You're right. You know, all of these people who came to join this cast, just to name a few: Tyler Perry, Patricia Heaton, Oprah Winfrey, just to tell the story of the birth of Jesus. How did they agree to do a religious film?
Well, you know, this film is religious, but it's also entertaining. And so I think for all of them, you know, the story of the Nativity is something close to their heart. And this was an opportunity to be part of a movie that told that story, that was also part of their brand. You know, they're entertainers. And so that's what we wanted to do here, was to tell the story in an entertaining way. So hopefully I think that's where it kind of they saw this overlapping with what they do already.
We're seeing a lot of sexual harassment in Hollywood, here in Washington, in the TV business. How does your faith guide you in Tinseltown, where faith and morals are often frowned upon?
Well, you know, I think it's my guiding star. I guess it really. I would say since I was a kid, my parents raised all of us kids in a way where we were aware of ourselves as a minority. We were aware that we were not representative of the mainstream community, and so we got very comfortable with that growing up. And so here I am in Hollywood. I do my thing, and people around do their thing. And you know, as long as I'm doing a good job making good movies, I think hopefully people will continue to hire me to do that.
Well, the movie is a great movie. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim Reckert, director of the faith-inspired animated feature film, The Star, in theaters everywhere.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, Yuletide festivities begin at the White House. Last night, the first family lit the national Christmas tree.
3, 2, 1.
President Trump counted down before his wife, First Lady Melania Trump, pushed the button to set the tree aglow with golden lights and silver stars. The annual event dates back to 1923 and President Calvin Coolidge. And we thank you for watching this week. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We leave you tonight with a powerful message from President Trump last night on the true meaning of Christmas. Good night and God bless.
The Christmas story begins 2,000 years ago with a mother, a father, their baby son, and the most extraordinary gift of all, the gift of God's love for all of humanity. Whatever our beliefs, we know that the birth of Jesus Christ and the story of this incredible life, forever changed the course of human history. Each and every year at Christmas time, we recognize that the real spirit of Christmas is not what we have, it's about who we are. Each one of us is a child of God. That is the true source of joy this time of the year. That is what makes every Christmas merry. And now, as the President of the United States, it's my tremendous honor to finally wish America and the world a very Merry Christmas.